Welcome to a quick discussion of Sonic Colors for the Nintendo DS. With the release of Sonic Colors Ultimate, I wanted to replay this version and give my overall impressions of it. So I'm about halfway through the game. I've unlocked the second set of worlds, Planet Wisp and Aquarium Park, but I still haven't unlocked Asteroid Coaster and of course Terminal Velocity. So we're going to start out in Tropical Resort. This map screen actually looks very reminiscent of the Wii version, albeit at a much lower resolution and with a lot less detail. When we jump into an actual world map though, it looks quite a bit different. So you might notice that there are 3 circles and 3 triangles, or pyramids technically. Basically, there are 2 main acts in a world, and several side missions. So it has a similar number of levels to the Wii version, but it is structured a bit differently. So let's jump into Act 1 of Tropical Resort. Sonic Colors for the Nintendo DS was developed by Dimps, the studio behind Sonic Advance, and also the Sonic Rush games. So if you played Sonic Rush, you'll probably notice that this is basically more Sonic Rush, which I don't mind, because I like Rush and Rush Adventure, even though both games do have certain moments that are a little bit frustrating at times. And that definitely carries over into Sonic Colors DS. Some of the level design leaves a bit to be desired, but for the most part, I actually really like this. Similar to the main game, there's basically a boost gauge, where you can boost when you collect Wisp power. We also have other Wisps as well, but some of them are different than the ones in the console version. So for Tropical Resort, instead of Laser, we have the Burst Wisp. The Burst Wisp would also appear in Sonic Forces, and work similarly, where you can basically get extra height. It's sort of like an extra jump that you can use until the gauge runs out. Like in the console version, Wisps are not immediately available in certain areas and have to be unlocked, incentivizing returning to past areas to get better scores and find red rings. So yeah, it's an interesting attempt at bringing Sonic Colors to a handheld, by making an entirely separate game. I actually missed this. In this era, a lot of games had separate handheld or even separate console versions for the Wii or even the PS2, because a lot of times developers would make a game tailored for the PS3 and 360, and that would not work on the Wii or PS2. And I definitely miss having multiple different versions of different games. It kind of is interesting to see different interpretations of the same source material across multiple different platforms. So that takes care of Act 1 of Tropical Resort, and that was an A rank. So the ranking system works somewhat similarly, where the max rank is an S rank, so that was pretty alright. Another difference from the Wii version is there are actually special stages. The special stages are touch-controlled, using the stylus and bottom screen to basically move Sonic through the half-pipe. If you played Sonic Rush, this is somewhat similar but works a bit differently. Instead of collecting rings, you have to collect the colored spheres. You basically go through multiple rounds of the half-pipe, and each round you have a different sphere to collect. And if you manage to meet the requirement before the end of each round, for 3 rounds in total, you will get the Chaos Emerald. This also means that there is a special final boss if you collect all of the Chaos Emeralds, similar to Sonic Rush and other Sonic games. And overall, I do like these special stages. The half-pipe is rather overdone, in all honesty, but this is honestly one of the better interpretations of it for a couple reasons. One, these aren't as overly punishing as Sonic 2 special stages, or even like Sonic 4 Episode 2, and the touch controls make it a lot more responsive. So in general, as far as the half-pipe goes, this is probably one of the better implementations I've seen. though I haven't played every game with the half-pipe. Like, I've played the Genesis version of Sonic 3D Blast, and only the Saturn version, and I think maybe the PC version has the half-pipe, so I actually haven't experienced that game's interpretation of this. But yeah, overall this isn't too bad. The touch controls are relatively responsive, and work pretty well. And yeah, I do feel like these are even easier than the ones in Sonic Rush, which were a little bit more challenging because they're essentially like Elite Beat Agent-style QuickTime events for extra rings, and as far as I remember, there isn't anything like that in Sonic Colors DS. So yeah, overall these are pretty easy going. Like, we already have over almost half of the requirement that we need, or over a little under double of the requirement is what I meant to say. So now we have to collect the yellow spheres in the final round for the Chaos Emerald. I actually already have this Chaos Emerald, but I'll go through the rest of this for the sake of demonstration. There are also these rainbow spheres that can be collected regardless of what color you have to collect. And you basically have like a chain bonus indicated in the top right of the bottom screen. We can collect those there for bonuses, so yeah. In general, the later ones do get a lot tougher, but even then, I feel like these are still pretty straightforward. Like, I remember not struggling with many of them, even later on. Like, I think the last one on my first playthrough took me a few tries, but overall wasn't that bad. And we have a Chaos Emerald that I already had, and an S rank, so we also got extra lives from that. Overall, this game isn't that difficult, hence why I have 34 lives at the halfway point of the game. And I think it's actually a little bit easier than the first Rush game and Rush Adventure, from what I remember at least. So next up, let's try one of the challenge acts. So yeah, there are 3 missions in each area that are unlocked by clearing the main acts. So let's go to Mission 1. One nice detail in Sonic Colors DS that isn't the case for the Wii version is that these optional missions feature characters that aren't in the Wii version. So you'll run into, like, Knuckles, Cream the Rabbit, Rouge the Bat, Shadow the Hedgehog, and so on. And there are little story scenes that set up each mission. I actually prefer this, even though the basic story is the same, and even though it's presented through text instead of fully rendered cutscenes for the most part. There are a few cutscenes, but in general it's through sort of visual novel-style scenes. I do like getting to see more of Sonic's friends, because the recent games have basically removed most of them from the main story, so it is cool to see them pop up in the side missions here.
I believe in you.
I actually picked a somewhat annoying mission, so we'll have to see how this goes. Similar to Sonic Colors on Wii, the missions are sort of shorter side missions that go through some of the same areas, but I actually prefer this structure because there are different requirements. So Sonic Colors has a ton of acts in the Wii version that are not optional, and they basically go through similar areas as the main stages. Like the first 2 acts or so are usually like full-sized acts, and then the rest are relatively short by comparison. So I actually do prefer having little optional challenges that mix up the gameplay instead of just simply going through a small 30-second level without any other major changes or gameplay mechanics. I don't know if I'll clear this, because we only have a few seconds left. Well, that was close. We had 6 seconds left, but we got through it with a C rank. I've never completed this game, either collecting the red rings or getting all the S ranks, just because a lot of the missions are very strict in timing, and even the optional missions have red rings, usually 2 in the side missions and 5 in the main acts. So yeah, I do like the presentation of this game, even though it is somewhat basic. I like having a lot more character interaction rather than just focusing on Sonic, Tails, Eggman, Yacker, and Cubot and Orbot. This version also includes unique boss battles, so let's head over to the boss of this area. So we have this planetoid robot here that isn't too difficult to defeat. We basically have to homing attack or boost into its arms to deal damage, and eventually it'll fall to the ground and we'll be able to attack its main body directly. These bosses aren't terribly difficult. We also still have Wisp powers in here, so we can actually use Burst to get up to the head of this robot earlier and kind of skip a cycle basically, like so. And we're already at the end of the fight because we used Burst. This is an example of the fight being a lot easier on a replay because of having Wisp powers that we would not actually have until a little bit later normally. Alright, so one more hit should do it. Even with the Wisp power, I'm pretty sure that was still almost as fast, if not slightly more time-consuming than the Wii version's first boss, because that boss with laser is very short. So let's show off a different area by returning to the planet screen. I haven't gone through all of these yet, so we'll stick to the ones I've played through more recently. So let's head to Starlight Carnival. This is one of the more memorable worlds of Sonic Colors on Wii because of its visuals, and in all fairness, it obviously doesn't look as impressive in the DS version, but still looks pretty cool. We're jumping into Act 2 because I actually think it's the more visually impressive of the two main acts. Some of the bosses are somewhat reminiscent to the Wii version. We'll see that a little bit later if I show off the boss of Starlight Carnival. But yeah, it is basically a separate game using the same story and aesthetic of the Wii version. The music is also a point of an aspect that was kind of downgraded for obvious reasons. The soundtrack of Sonic Colors is actually really good, and in general the soundtrack still sounds pretty alright on the DS version, but definitely sounds a little bit worse. So yeah, it's almost one of those things, one of those situations where it's hard to compare the two versions. Some prefer the Wii version, some prefer the DS version, but because they're basically two separate games, I think there's merit to actually playing through both. Even if you don't necessarily like the story of Sonic Colors, it is nice getting to see more of the cast in the DS version, even though it's not voice acted for the most part. Here we have the Rocket Wisp to get past those crushers. We have to time that very carefully. We also have these little arrows that fire us to later parts of the level, which are actually pretty cool. Another difference between Sonic Rush and this is that the boost looks slightly different. It's kind of rainbow colored, similar to the Wisps in Sonic Colors on Wii. And yeah, overall this is a pretty interesting interpretation of the main story, with a lot of unique elements, like the Chaos Emeralds and special stages. In some ways, because of the two-act structure and the boss, it almost feels more like a traditional Sonic game rather than the six-act structure and the boss of the Wii version. And in some ways I prefer it. I kind of don't like the Wii version structure because of how a lot of the small acts are basically required but feel like filler. Like there are so many acts in Sonic Colors on Wii where you basically are going through the motions, and going through areas that you've basically already gone through somewhat recently. And it's not as exciting as having like optional challenges. I know people were actually hoping this version would also get a remaster at some point. I think that's highly unlikely, to be honest, because it would honestly take a lot more work than taking a relatively recent, as if a decade-old game is recent. But it was a console game on Wii, so it's a little bit easier to bring over, and even then I've heard a lot of things about Sonic Colors Ultimate, at least the early access version for digital pre-orders. So yeah, maybe it's a good thing that the DS version was not incorporated in. So this isn't my favorite part of Starlight Carnival. This is definitely one area where the Wii version is a little bit better, but still has some problems. Like, this is basically... oh. As I was saying, this is basically an auto-scroller, but in some ways, Starlight Carnival, even on the Wii version, kind of has this problem too, where it relies a lot on automated sections. It just feels less obvious because, frankly, it's a lot more visually exciting and in 3D in a lot of cases. But like, a lot of the light roads in Starlight Carnival on Wii, as impressive as they look, you're basically running in a straight line, and it's mostly automated other than sidestepping left or right. So yeah, it's still basically an auto-scroller, so in some ways, this honestly isn't a terrible adaptation of having an auto-scroller in this section, just it's a little bit slower. And there are auto-scrollers even in the Wii version, because they're the parts with like moving platforms that you have to bounce off of in like Aquarium Park. So yeah, the pacing of Sonic Colors, both versions really, is kind of odd. Like, you know, side-scrollers in general are kind of odd to have in a 3D Sonic game, and having a purely 2D Sonic game almost makes it feel less bad, because this is dedicated to a fully 2D Sonic game rather than being a hybrid. On the flip side, a lot of set pieces in the Wii version that are a lot more automated feel a lot more spectacular than simply, yeah, sitting on a slow-moving, auto-scrolling platform. So there's definitely some issues in both versions. To close out this look at Sonic Colors DS, I think we're going to fight the boss of Starlight Carnival. So yeah, this is an example of a boss that is the same between the Wii and DS versions, but it's actually fought in a different way. We have to boost into the rocket capsule to break it open. I actually missed it, so instead we have to rely on basically knocking these bombs back into the ship. And yeah, it's an interesting approach because of having some elements in common and a lot of elements that are very different. But yeah, in general, I would recommend both. This is kind of scary. We basically have to either dodge under or jump over. It's kind of like the Bio-Lizard of all things from Sonic Adventure 2. We have no ring, so I might die here actually. I'm going to try to be very careful, but this boss can be a little bit difficult. We have rockets, so we can deal a lot of damage here. I really could use a ring, so hopefully... oh, there we go. Now the boss is switching up his attacks. We have these lasers. So yeah, it is a very unique game. If you have only played the Wii version and haven't played this version, I would still recommend it. I do prefer the Wii version, even though in some ways I think this might be a more solid game because it is strictly focused on being 2D instead of trying to do both. So that was a quick look at Sonic Colors for the DS. If you haven't played it, it's also relatively easy to find on the internet. It's not overly expensive like a lot of DS games are. So yeah, if you like the basic structure of Sonic Colors and haven't tried the DS version, I would highly recommend this version as well. So with that being said, thank you for watching, and I hope you'll join me next time for another discussion.